If you have ever sat through an entire meeting in English without saying a single word because you did not know how to join the conversation, or if you have ever tried to speak and been talked over before you could finish your sentence, today is going to change how you show up in every meeting for the rest of your career. By the end of this episode, you will have the exact authentic phrases that let you join conversations, challenge ideas, take control of a discussion, and close a meeting like a professional native speaker. Welcome to English Through Stories. I'm Sarah. This is our Authentic English versus Textbook English series, and today we are tackling one of the most high stakes professional English environments there is the workplace meeting. We are covering four specific scenarios: joining a conversation in progress, disagreeing with an idea professionally, keeping a meeting on track when it goes off topic, and closing a meeting with clarity and action. Let's get straight into it. Our first scenario is joining a conversation in progress. Picture this: you're in a meeting, the conversation is flowing, people are speaking quickly, building on each other's points, jumping in confidently, and you have something valuable to add, but you cannot find the moment to say it. By the time you think you have found the opening, someone else has already moved on, and you sit there with your point unsaid, feeling invisible and frustrated. This is one of the most common experiences for non native English speakers in professional meetings, and the reason it happens is almost never about intelligence or the quality of the idea. It is almost always about not having the authentic language to claim your space in the conversation. Here is what textbook English gives you. Excuse me, I would like to say something. May I speak, please? Perfectly correct. And almost guaranteed to be ignored in a fast moving meeting. Here is why, excuse me, in a lively professional discussion is too soft. May I speak, please? Sounds so formal that it creates an awkward pause nobody wants to be responsible for. And I would like to say something tells people nothing about what you are going to say, which gives them no reason to stop and listen. Here is what authentic professional English uses instead. So there are five categories of authentic joining language, and each one works in a different context. The first is the direct jump. This is for fast moving conversations where politeness will get you nowhere. You simply say, can I just jump in here for a second? Or can I just add something to that? Or sorry to cut in, but I think this is relevant. The phrase just is doing important social work in all of these. It signals that your interruption will be brief and targeted. It reduces the feeling of intrusion. The second is the agreement bridge. This is when you want to join by building on something someone just said. You say, that's a really good point, and it actually connects to something I wanted to raise. Or, completely agree with that, and I think there's another dimension worth considering. Or, yes, and to add to what you said. Starting with agreement before adding your point is a masterclass in authentic meeting participation. You are not interrupting, you are elevating it. The third is the flagging technique. This is when you have a point but cannot find the right moment to make it. You flag it early so people know it is coming. You say, I want to come back to something Sarah raised a moment ago. I have a thought on this that I'd like to share when there's a moment. Flagging your intention creates a psychological reservation in the conversation. People will actively make space for you because they know something is coming. The fourth is the question bridge. Instead of making a statement, you enter the conversation through a question. You say, can I ask something on the back of that? Or just to clarify something here, are we saying that? Um, Questions are almost never ignored in meetings because they require a response. They pull you into the conversation rather than pushing your way in. Uh, the fifth is the pace setter. This is for when the conversation is genuinely moving too fast for you to follow. You say, "Can I just ask us to slow down for a second because I want to make sure I'm following this correctly?" Or, "Sorry, before we move on, I just want to make sure I've got this right." No native speaker in a professional meeting will judge you for asking to slow down. They will respect it because it signals that you're paying careful attention and you care about getting things right. Here's a complete, authentic meeting, opening exchange showing these techniques in action. Right? So I think we should move forward with option B. It seems like the most cost effective route. Actually, before we go there, can I just jump in for a second? I want to make sure we've considered the timeline implications of option B because I think there might be something we haven't fully factored in yet. Sure, go ahead. So if we go with option B, we're looking at a 6-week implementation window, which puts us right up against the Q3 deadline. And I'm not saying it's the wrong call. I just think it's worth flagging before we commit. That is a really important point, actually. Let's look at the timeline. Did you hear it? Can I just jump in for a second? I want to make sure we've considered. I'm not saying it's the wrong call. I just think it's worth flagging. Every phrase is authentic, professional, and impossible to ignore. Here's your reflection question for this scenario. Think about the last meeting you attended in English. Did you say everything you wanted to say? If not, what stopped you? Was it the pace of the conversation? Was it not knowing how to break in? Was it a fear that your point was not good enough? Comment below and be honest with yourself because the point you did not make in that meeting mattered. And next time you will have the language to make it. Our second scenario is disagreeing with an idea professionally. Someone has just made a suggestion in a meeting and you think it is wrong. Not slightly off, not worth a second look, genuinely wrong. And you need to say so in a way that challenges the idea without attacking the person, maintains your professional relationship, and does not make the rest of the meeting awkward. Textbook English says, "I disagree with this idea." I think this is wrong. This will not work. In a meeting context, this kind of direct, blunt disagreement creates sides. People either agree with you or with the person you just challenged. The meeting becomes a debate rather than a discussion. And even if you are completely right, the social cost is high. Here is the authentic professional approach to disagreement in meetings. The first authentic technique is the yes and reframe. Instead of saying I disagree, you say, "That's an interesting approach, and I wonder if there's a way to take it even further." Or, "I see what you're going for with that, and I wonder if we might get there more effectively by." You are not agreeing. You are appearing to build while actually redirecting. This is one of the most sophisticated, authentic professional techniques in English, and it is used constantly in high performing teams. The second technique is the evidence question. Instead of stating your disagreement, you ask a question that leads the other person towards seeing the problem themselves. You say, "What impact do you think that would have on the Q3 numbers?" Or, "How do you see that working given the constraints we've got?" Or, "Have we considered what the client's response might be to that approach?" A well placed question is often more powerful than a direct challenge because it invites reflection rather than triggering defensiveness. The third technique is the concern flag. You say, "I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly because I have a slight concern I'd like to raise." Or, "I love the ambition here. And, and I just want to flag something that might be worth considering before we go further." The concern flag positions your disagreement as due diligence rather than opposition. You are not against the idea. You are making sure it is as strong as possible. The fourth technique is the data anchor. In professional meetings, the most respected disagreements are anchored in evidence. You say, "My instinct would actually push back on that slightly, and here's why." The last time we tried something similar, we saw a 30% drop in engagement, or I think the numbers might tell a slightly different story here. If we look at the Q2 data, we can see that. Anchoring your disagreement in data depersonalizes it. You are not challenging the person, you are challenging the assumption in light of the evidence. Here is a complete, authentic meeting disagreement exchange. I think we should double the marketing budget for this campaign. Based on what we did last year, I think it will deliver a significant return. I love the ambition on that. And I just want to make sure we're stress testing it before we commit. My slight concern is that last year's campaign was in a very different market context. Consumer confidence was significantly higher in Q2 last year than it is right now. Uh, if we double the budget and the return doesn't materialize at the same rate, we could be looking at a significant shortfall. Have we modeled out a downside scenario? That's a fair challenge. I don't think we have done a downside model. Actually, it might be worth doing before we sign off on the budget. I mean, I'm not saying don't do it. I just think we'd all feel more confident going in if we knew what the floor looked like. Agreed. Can we get that together before the next meeting? Uh, did you hear the moves? I love the ambition on that. My slight concern is if we double the budget and the return doesn't materialize, have we modeled out a downside scenario? I'm not saying don't do it. Every phrase is authentic, every phrase disagrees without attacking, and every phrase keeps the conversation moving toward a better outcome. Here is your reflection question for this scenario. Think about a time in a professional meeting when you disagreed with something but said nothing, or when you disagreed and it came out more harshly than you intended. What was the outcome of that silence or that harshness? How did it affect the decision that was made or the relationship with the person you disagreed with? Comment below because understanding the real cost of how we disagree is the first step toward doing it better. Our third scenario is keeping a meeting on track when it goes off topic. You're running a meeting or participating in one, and the conversation has wandered completely off the agenda. People are talking about something interesting but completely irrelevant. Time is running out. Decisions need to be made, and you need to bring the conversation back without making people feel dismissed or shut down. Textbook English says we are off topic. Please return to the agenda. We do not have time for this. In a meeting context, this is about as subtle as a fire alarm. It signals irritation, it dismisses the conversation that has just happened, and it creates the impression that you care more about the agenda than about the people in the room. Here is the authentic approach. The first authentic technique is the parking lot. This is one of the most widely used authentic meeting management phrases in professional English, and it is almost never taught. In language classes, you say, that's a really important point, and I want to make sure we give it the time it deserves. Can we park that for now and come back to it after we've covered the key agenda items? The parking lot technique does two things simultaneously. It validates the off topic contribution, and it creates a committed promise to return to it later. People feel heard rather than dismissed. The second technique is the bridge back. You say, I think this actually connects to what we were discussing before, which was, or building on that point, which links back to the question of. The bridge back creates the illusion of continuity even when you are redirecting. People feel like the conversation is flowing naturally rather than being managed. The third technique is the time flag. You say, I'm conscious of time and I want to make sure we get to the decisions we need to make today. Can I suggest we move forward and revisit this if we have time at the end? The phrase I'm conscious of time is far more collaborative. Then we are running out of time. And can I suggest frames the redirect as a question rather than a command? The fourth technique is the action anchor. When a meeting is going off topic, the most effective, authentic redirect is often to bring everyone back to outcomes. You say, let me just bring us back to what we need to walk out of this room, the having decided today. We need to confirm X, Y, and Z before we close. That reminder of the concrete outcomes needed focuses the group instantly and professionally. Here is a complete, authentic, off topic meeting management exchange. So that actually reminds me of the situation we had with the Manchester account last year where we ended up in a really similar position, and I think there are some lessons there that that's such a valuable point, and I absolutely wanna make sure we capture it. Can I suggest we park that for the last 10 minutes of the meeting? Because 'Cause I'm conscious that we've got 3 decisions to land before we close today, and I wanna make sure we have time to do all of them properly. Is everyone okay with that? Yes, of course. Good call. Thank you. So let's come back to the question of the rollout timeline. We need a decision on whether we're going with the April or May window. Warmth and control in that redirect. That's such a valuable point. Can I suggest we park that? I'm conscious that we've got 3 decisions to land. Is everyone okay with that? It is professional, it is warm, and it is completely in control. Here is your reflection question for this scenario. Think about meetings you have participated in that went completely off track and ended without the decisions that needed to be made. What was the cost of that? What happened as a result of not landing those decisions? And if you were running that meeting, which of the authentic techniques we just covered would have made the biggest difference? Comment below because the ability to manage a meeting in authentic English is one of the most visible professional skills there is, and the people who do it well are always noticed. Our fourth and final scenario is closing a meeting with clarity and action. A meeting that ends without clear actions and owners is a meeting that might as well never have happened. And yet, the way most meetings close in textbook English is either too abrupt or too vague to produce real follow through. Textbook English says, the meeting is finished. Thank you for attending. I will send the minutes later. Goodbye. Clear, complete, and producing almost zero accountability for what actually needs to happen next. Here is the authentic professional approach to closing a meeting. The first authentic technique is the live summary. Before you close, you quickly summarize the decisions made and actions agreed. You say, right, before we wrap up, let me just do a quick recap of where we've landed. We've agreed to go with the May timeline. Sarah is going to pull together the budget model by end of Thursday, and we're going to reconvene next Tuesday to sign off on the final plan. Does that match everyone's understanding? The live summary does 3 things. It confirms alignment, it creates public accountability, and it ensures nothing has been misunderstood. The second authentic technique is the action owner check. After summarizing, you confirm ownership explicitly. You say, just to confirm, Sarah, you're picking up the budget model, and James, you're leading the client communication. Naming people and their actions out loud in a meeting creates a much stronger commitment than simply noting it in minutes that nobody reads. People are far more likely to follow through on something they have verbally agreed to in front of their colleagues. The third authentic technique is the explicit next step. You say, so our next step is a check in on Tuesday at 2. Hey, I'll send a calendar invite today. Or we'll regroup on this once Sarah has the model ready. So let's say Thursday afternoon. Explicit next steps with specific times eliminate the vague, will circle back language that produces nothing. Authentic professional English is always specific about what happens next. The fourth authentic technique is the energy close. How you close a meeting affects how people feel about attending the next one. Authentic professional meeting closers always end with something energizing rather than just administrative. You say, I think we've made some really good progress today. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions. This was a genuinely productive session. Or, great work, everyone. I feel much clearer about where we're heading. And I think we've got a solid plan. These phrases take 5 seconds and make an enormous difference to team morale and willingness to engage in the next meeting. Here is a complete, authentic meeting close. Okay, I think we've covered everything we needed to today. Before we wrap up, let me just do a quick recap. We've decided to push the launch to May. We've agreed the core messaging framework, and we've identified 3 areas that need further research. In terms of actions, Sarah, you're pulling the updated budget model together by Thursday. James, you're leading the initial client briefing next week. And I'm going to circulate a revised timeline to everyone by end of today. Does that all land correctly with everyone? Yes, that's right. Perfect. So let's plan to reconvene Tuesday afternoon to review Sarah's model and to confirm the final sign off. You'll send a calendar invite now. And I just want to say this was a really productive session today. There was some great thinking in this room, and I think we're in a much stronger position than we were an hour ago. Thanks, everyone. And before we wrap up, let me just do a quick recap. Does that all land correctly with everyone? Let's plan to reconvene. I'll send a calendar invite now. This was a really productive session. Great thinking. In this room, every phrase is warm, specific, accountable, and professionally confident. Here is your reflection question for this final scenario. Think about the last meeting you were in that ended without clear actions or next steps. What happened in the days and weeks after that meeting? Did things get done? Did people follow through, or did the decisions made in that room quietly disappear? Comment below and tell me what one change in how that meeting closed would have made the biggest difference. Because the authentic language of meeting closure is not just professional courtesy. It is the difference between a meeting that produces results and one that produces more meetings. Let me give you your today's episode for joining a conversation in progress. Can I just jump in here for a second for direct entry? That's a great point, and it connects to something I wanted to raise for the agreement bridge. Flag your point early with, I want to come back to something when there's a moment. Enter through a question with, can I ask something on the back of that? And use, can I just ask us to slow down for a second when the pace is too fast? For disagreeing professionally. Um, Use the yes and reframe with, that's interesting. And I wonder if we could take it even further. Use the evidence question to lead people to the problem themselves. Flag concerns with, I just want to make sure we're stress testing this, and anchor disagreement in data with the numbers might tell a slightly different story here. For keeping meetings on track, park off topic contributions with that. That's a valuable point. Can we park that and come back to it, bridge back with, this connects to what we were discussing before? Of time, and can I suggest we move forward and bring focus back with, let me just remind us of what we need to walk out of this room, having decided. For closing meetings with clarity, always do a live recap with, before we wrap up, let me just summarize where we've landed. Confirm ownership explicitly by naming people and their actions out loud. I'll give explicit next steps with specific times, not vague promises to circle back, and always close with an energy phrase that makes people feel the meeting was worthwhile. This is Sarah. Every meeting you walk into from today is an opportunity to show up differently. You now have the language. Go use it. I will see you in the next episode of English Through Stories. Take care.